Hello there. Sorry about that. I was busy listening to the song "Faded" by Soul Decision. Look it up. I needed something to get me in the mood, get me excited experience. I gotta, get me amped up to talk about this particular episode of American Ninja Warrior because, quite frankly, kind of lame. Kind of lame. But on that note, I just wanted to. I think in the event of this particular episode, I have a question for all of you that I want you to answer in the comments below. And that is, what do you think is the appropriate number of clears for each round? So what I want is 6 numbers, basically, is how many of each qualifier, an estimate of like how many clears you want in the regional qualifier round, how many clears you want to see in the regional finals round, and then once we get to Vegas, how many clears in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and the final stage you want to see every season. You can give me ranges if you want, or just sort of like approximations. You don't have to be exact. No one's going to hold you to an exact number if you say like 11, and you say 10 is fine. No one's going to hold you up to that. So, just let me know what you think, because this episode, I think, is an appropriate time to bring up that question. That's good. That's good. It's berry sangria flavor. It's like drinking a berry sangria without any of the alcohol, which means I can be coherent while doing this review, because you don't want to see me do a review under the influence of alcohol. Well, a lot of alcohol. But with that all said, hello! My name is William from 222 Productions, and I am here to talk to you about the American Ninja Warrior Season 11 Seattle-Tacoma Finals. I almost got through it all without messing up. In approximately 20 minutes or less, starting right now. We had a good run. We were having a good run with the regional finals. The first 3 I all thought were quite enjoyable, and especially the LA one I thought was really enjoyable from a personal point of view. I really enjoyed Atlanta. I thought it was a big improvement. And Oklahoma City was fun for what it was, even though I don't care for Fallout or the Bouncing Spider, which wasn't that regional. It was that was Atlanta. But it made it work. This just might be one of the most overkill courses they've had for a regional finals course. Because let me just refresh your memory of what this course is like, as well as some stuff that's happened in the past. Striding steps, of course, followed by lunatic ledges, the battle roll, the broken bridge, and then the lightning bolts. Now, lightning bolts technically got nerfed in the regional finals. I know this because I was in Philly last year where they had the lightning bolts, so I kind of know about some of the rules. I was told last year that the bar is easier to grip in the regional finals. That's what I was told. I don't know completely if that's true. But more importantly, they changed the rules so that you are allowed to dismount the obstacle early. In the regional qualifiers, you have to go to the second half of the third cradle before you can dismount. But in the regional finals, you're now allowed to dismount early. And that is the main difference. It's not that big of a nerf, all those things. It's not that big a nerf. And so, first and foremost, just bring the obstacle back. Like, when I was in Philly last year, the cutoff point was the lightning bolts. And this year, if they had stuck with the top 15, the cutoff would have still been the lightning bolts. We would have had one person who failed the lightning bolts and still move on. I don't know who that person would have been. Maybe Jake Murray? I don't know. But that would have been the same case if the same rules applied this year. So then, of course, we have the warped wall and the salmon ladder. And then we have the return of the floating monkey bars. And a new version of the Iron Maiden called the Northwest Passage, which is kind of cute. So with the Iron Maiden, it was essentially reverse pegboard, where you had these handles that went on top of pegs that were sticking out, but then you had free-forming handles that you just climbed on the way up, and then down you used the handles. With the Northwest Passage, you have like these hooks that hook underneath, and like you have to make sure they're lodged, and you go down them, almost kind of like you're using ice picks, but then you use the hooks again to go up, and then the hooks go down. And I'm pretty sure it's a harder version of the Iron Maiden. And the floating monkey bars is a great obstacle, but it's also just tough because you're trying to get that hook perfectly into the cradle. And the challenge with the floating monkey bars is that if you miss a cradle, you're going to swing back, and chances are your momentum, it has a chance to just, drag you off with one hand. It's one of the more technique-heavy obstacles in that there's not a lot of room for error. You can't really muscle through it. You have to be accurate. And the less accurate you are with this, very technique-heavy obstacle, the more it's just going to drain you, and in some cases, it's going to force you to hold on with your weaker arm, your weaker hand. Well, for most people, it's your left hand. Your offhand. That's what I was trying to say. And it's just going to be more difficult. Now, I want you to flash back to season 9. I think it was Oklahoma City. I don't remember exactly, but there was a regional in season 9 that had zero clears, and in that region, in addition to the broken pipes, which were very difficult, you had the floating monkey bars and the Iron Maiden, which is the same thing as the Northwest Passage. And so when you combine those two obstacles with the lightning bolts, which is also a big ninja killer, you have these 3 ninja killer obstacles all in one group. And it kind of blows my mind that no one, I don't want to say no one, but like the production staff didn't look at this course and say, hey, maybe this course is a little too challenging. Maybe we made this course a little too overkill. And so it's like, oh, hey, we had no clears this episode. No kidding. I'm not surprised. Once I saw the course and just saw how difficult it is, it's like, yeah, no kidding, we didn't have any clears. It's not surprising at all. It's really not. So let's go through the episode. There's just a few. I don't know how much I actually have to say. It's kind of. I apologize. Allergies can be annoying sometimes. Oh man, no wonder I needed that pickup. I'm already lacking. You know what? You know what I'm gonna do? I threw him over there. Of course I did. I'm gonna do this review while listening to some music because I need energy. I need some energy. I need some energy. Let's see. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can't hear this in my microphone. Otherwise, I might have to redo this review because I'll get content ID match. Whoops. So we start with Nick Hansen, which was a surprise, but it was cool. They did a mid-run. He didn't have a profile. They did a mid-run, like little profile piece about getting honored in Alaska. He ended up getting revenge on the lightning bolts, which is cool. And he had a save on the floating monkey bars, but he ended up falling on the obstacle anyway. His grip just gave out. So then they had Jeremy Taiwo. Mentioned that he was a Rio Olympics decathlete, which is no joke at all. But he ended up messing up on the lunatic ledges. He just missed the transfer from the first ledge to the second ledge. Kind of kicked it with his feet and missed. Then they went to Jake Murray. And I was surprised to see him so early, so I was immediately distracted. Oh man, this is actually kind of challenging, but I'm gonna do it because I need to get this episode more interesting to me in my head. They did an outtake of Jake Murray's Hannibal Lecter entrance, which is pretty funny. Unfortunately, what wasn't funny was he went down in the lightning bolts. He got crooked on the first cradle and then went down trying to adjust, and it's like, that's shocking. And he's not moving on to Vegas, and it sucks. Because, like, Jake Murray's really good, but unfortunately, it just didn't work out. I think Jake Murray's someone who can win it all if he pulls it all together. But not happening this time. So fast forwards, Jackson Meyer failed the lightning bolts. Glenn Albert failed the lightning bolts. And David Moonen failed the floating monkey bars. And then they showed Maddie Howard. She's the intensive care nurse. They mentioned that she was inspired by Jessie Graff, and now she's competing against her. So that's cool. Full circle. And then she got close on the broken bridge. There was a bit of a scariness. If I remember correctly, she started leaning back on one step, but was able to readjust her momentum and balance and center of gravity, make it through. That was cool. That was really cool. But she got revenge on the lightning bolts, got up the wart wall, and she fell on the floating monkey bars, which was a good run, and actually will put her in the top 12, as we will later find out. So good run overall. Kristen Marie, however, failed the broken bridge and close to the end, and Charlene Darling Hammond failed the dismount of the floating monkey bars. He was unable to do it. And then they had Scott Behrens from the Backyard Ninja Kids. They did a whole feature on his YouTube channel and how his kids competed on American Ninja Warrior Jr. I only watched one episode of that show. It just wasn't for me. It's a kid's show, so it's fine. That exists. If kids like it, good on them. But just for me, it's I don't know. It didn't grab me the first episode, so I didn't continue watching it. He ended up. Scott did pretty well. He made it to the floating monkey bars. He looked good. He's moving on to Vegas, so good on you on representing YouTubers, the ninja YouTubers. Good on you, Scott. And then they went into Lance Pecos after the commercial break, and I'm really worried that this thing's going to bleed into the microphone. Oh, man. This is going to be such a huge mistake. They did Lance Pecos next. They showed him. They didn't give him a profile. Just got the stats treatment. And he went on the lightning bolts from Mega Wall to not moving on. That's... I'm trying to think. Is Lance the first Mega Wall winner to not move on? He might be. I mean, just referring to the same season, he might be. He might legit be. Then they went to Carson Voiles, and honestly, I felt like I'm pretty sure they've mentioned his family's medical history and his medical stuff before, but this was too long and too it felt too much information, It just made me sad. There was no upside to me just watching this. I know. I hope the best for Carson and his family, but it's I didn't need them to go into that deep in the show. And also, I always kind of mention this sort of stuff, but I don't like it when they start runs mid-run, and now they start his run mid-run. But you know what? He might have had a close call on the floating monkey bars, but he was able to recover. really well, actually, and he made it to the Northwest Passage, but failed, unfortunately. Then, in fast forwards, Gavin Maxwell failed the lightning bolts, Rainer Jaunt failed the lightning bolts, Ben Martin failed the lightning bolts, and Burt Copeland failed the lightning bolts. A lot of people failed the lightning bolts. And then they had Sandy Zimmerman. I felt like they went into, again, I think this went into too much of a TMI sort of thing. It's like, I'm a Sandy supporter. I knew who she was before this episode, for the qualifier episode, I should say. You know, the whole, it's kind of weird how they whole frame this, because, like, I don't necessarily think it should be embarrassing to admit that, like, you grew up poor and on welfare and in foster care. That's kind of like how it was framed. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I'm glad that she came over all of that, you know? But it was just, I don't know, I just felt it was kind of weird how they framed it, but clearly she's doing better now, and I'm glad for that. She ended up making it to the floating monkey bars, and she did good, she did well. Like, this was her best season, and I'll talk about a little bit more about her in a minute. However, Leif Sundberg really could have used that power tower speed pass, because he went out on the lightning bolts, and Matt Dulce went out on the floating monkey bars. And then they, wow, I just realized they did both Carson and Dan Yeager mid-run. Wow. I hate it when they do that. They did that in LA also with Flip and Kretsch. It's like, come on, man. But yeah, they did a little flashback of Dan Yeager's profile. He ended up making it to the Northwest Passage. He was on the second part of 3. He ended up falling after trying some figure 4 stuff to help relieve the pressure, but he ended up failing, and unfortunately one of the handles landed on his head, and it cut him open, and it's just like, man, what is up with, you know, people getting hurt on obstacles this year? I feel like people are getting busted open more than ever, or they're getting busted open, or concussion. Oh, by the way, just a quick update. I learned that Maggie Thorne actually did suffer a concussion, unfortunately, on the diving boards. But you have that, and in hindsight, having an obstacle where the handles are inserted from underneath and can easily slide out, probably not the best idea. It sounds kind of dangerous, like, because they're hard and they can land on people's heads. I don't think they should bring it back. I think it seems like a bad idea, honestly, to bring it back. And then we had Megan Martin, and they mentioned that she needs to do well, which makes sense, because you know, she can't rely on the women's rule, because we've already had 2 women reach the floating monkey bars at this point, and enough men will reach the floating monkey bars. But unfortunately, Megan Martin goes crooked on the second lightning bolt cradle, and while attempting to fix it, she puts too much force into it and pops out. And for the first time ever, Megan Martin is not going to Vegas. And this might be a bit of a hot take to some people. I don't think it's a big loss to have Megan Martin not at Vegas. Let me explain myself. Megan has always done well in the regionals, you know, regional qualifier, regional final. She, generally speaking, has done quite well. But when it comes to Vegas, she is just too slow on the course. And it is frustrating sometimes to watch her and not move with any sense of urgency, because it's a timed course. There's a time limit. You only have so much time to complete the course, and she doesn't have a sense of urgency running stage 1, and so she's not someone who I can see clearing stage 1 in any time any time in the future, unfortunately, unless she learns to pick up the pace. That's one of the reasons why I've always advocated for regionals to have a time limit, is so people can learn that they have to move when competing in Vegas. You have to move. You have to complete the course within a certain time. Megan, I think, benefits in the regional rounds because she has that luxury of not having a time limit, and for whatever reason in Vegas she just doesn't go fast enough. So it's not. I'm sorry. I don't think it's the biggest loss in the world. I think. And honestly, I think it's kind of showing here because she barely moved on in the qualifier this year, and she's not moving on this year. She almost didn't move on the qualifier because she was slow, and she was barely fast enough to finish the top 5 women. So that's kind of me. Hopefully Megan improves in the future, but it's like, I don't think she was going to clear Vegas anyway. So at least stage 1 of Vegas, I should specify. In more fast forwards, Marquez Green failed the lightning bolts and Zach Scholes failed the floating monkey bars. And then we had Nate Burkhalter. His friends were intelligent enough to tell him to keep going in terms of a time thing. And he was fast enough to the floating monkey bars. His first time going to Vegas in 4 years. He got stuck in the floating monkey bars, but whatever. He's moving on. He's happy. I'm sure he is. And then Alex Hatch, a tugboat mate apprentice. This was, and he was a cute dog too. I thought I like the dog. It has that. I really like it. It has that. What's that? Cracker Jack box. It's like something you would see on a Cracker Jack package. What's it called? Bingo? Is that Cracker Jack's dog? Bingo? I'm really curious. Yeah, it was a cool little video package. Unfortunately, it was oh yeah, okay. He had a hard landing on the barrel roll, and he was checking his neck because he's had previous neck surgery, so that was a little bit scary. But unfortunately, he ended up going out, if I remember, relatively early on the lightning bolts, so he's not moving on. Bit of a weird one in terms of placement. It felt more like a qualifier run in terms of presentation, but I guess you got to mix it up. And I don't know. I like the profile, so I didn't have much problem with it. In the final fast forwards that they showed, Brandon Varner failed the lightning bolts, and Lauren Ball failed the floating monkey bars. And then they moved on to Sean Bryan. Sean. He had that ankle concern still because it was only 1 day since the qualifier. But he did a little heel click at the end of the broken bridge, which I don't have a problem with because there's no pressure for him to do well. So whatever. And more impressively, he did a big skip on the lightning bolts. This was cool. He went from the first half of the first cradle to the second half of the second cradle in one move. That was awesome. And then he went to the third cradle and then just dismounted. So just 1, 2, 3 moves, he's out. That is the most efficient I've ever seen someone do the lightning bolts. That was really cool to see him do that. But unfortunately, he ended up getting stuck on the floating monkey bars and fell. So he didn't get to compete for the safety pass anyway. And that means that Jessie Graff was the last person that they showed. I doubt she was the last person to run. But they made a big deal about how she still hasn't beaten a regional finals course, and that Casey is still the only person to do it. I really hope that we get a woman to clear the regional finals course, just so we can stop hearing people say that Casey is the only one to do it still. I just want a second woman to do it at this point. Jessie, honestly, I I couldn't see a scenario in which Jessie was the only one to clear. I know she's done really well. I know she's placed second in the past and all that, but I just didn't see this happening. And yeah, she actually ended up doing the best on the Northwest Passage of the three people. But because she made it to the obstacle slower, she doesn't get to go to the power tower. It's kind of weird in that regard, because they were like, she made it further than anyone else, but she doesn't get to compete in the power tower because our rules only specify that the checkpoints are in between the obstacles, and there's no checkpoints in the middle of the obstacles. So, yay, but you don't get rewarded. The other thing worth mentioning is that because Jessie did well, this knocked out Sandy Zimmerman from the competition, which really made me sad, because I was really pulling for Sandy. But unfortunately, we had two women in the top 12, so Sandy couldn't even use the women's rule to move on. And Sandy is the only person to fail the floating monkey bars and not move on to Vegas. She finished in 13th place of a competition where only the top 12 move on. It's unfortunate. If we still had the same rules as last year of the top 15, she would have moved on, and sub 1 from the lightning bolts would have moved on too. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen. It's unfortunate, because it's her best season, and man, I've said it before, if she was in a different regional, she would have moved on. If we had the same rules as last year, she would have moved on. It's unfortunate. It's just unfortunate. And so that left us with a power tower between Carson Voiles and Dan Yeager. Unfortunately, this was not even close. Dan got super hung up on the rings multiple times. I know that they showed at least 2 instances in which he missed rings. So Carson was able to win easily and win the safety pass. I think it's safe to say that the producers weren't expecting Carson and Dan to be the two people competing for the speed pass. Safety pass. They were probably hoping for some combination of Jake, Lance, Sean, or Jessie, and maybe Lauren. I like to think Lauren was in that conversation too. He should be. But yeah, so there you go. Carson Voiles reaps the benefit of a overly difficult course and gets the safety pass. So good on you, Carson. We'll see how you do in Vegas. And so let's just go through some final stats. This is taking way longer than I thought it would, and if I end up accidentally bleeding the music into my microphone, I'm going to have to redo it anyway. So this would have been entirely wasted. But if you're watching this right now, it means it didn't bleed through, and so this bit worked. Sort of. I don't know. This episode was kind of bland, because I know saying no clears isn't, in the past I've said, an episode with 0 clears isn't inherently bad, but that requires it to be entertaining, and the way that the fails happened in this episode wasn't indicative of an entertaining episode. It wasn't super entertaining. There were some entertaining moments, but as a whole, I didn't think it was very entertaining. But let's just go through the numbers here. We had 33 competitors compete in this particular episode. We saw 12 full runs, 2 runs that were started, made progress, 15 fast forwards, which means 4 people got cut, unfortunately. And so, just going through the actual course itself, no one failed the shrinking slips, 1 lunatic ledge fail, 0 barrel roll fails, 1 person failed the broken bridge, and then 17 people failed the lightning bolts. That's right, 17 people, more than half the field, failed the lightning bolts. And that is why I think it's kind of silly to put 2 powerful obstacles on the back half of a course that includes the lightning bolts. That's just silly. I'm getting thirsty. No one failed the wart wall. No one failed the salmon ladder. And then we had 11 people fail the floating monkey bars, and the remaining 3 people failed the Northwest Passage, which means no one even got to, compete on the spider trap, let alone complete it. So 0 completions in this episode. Quick rundown of everyone who did not move on to Vegas. Jeremy Taiwo, who failed the lunatic lunges. Christy Marie, who failed the broken bridge. And then everyone who failed the lightning bolts, which includes Alex Hatch, Bart Copeland, Ben Martin, Brandon Varner, Gavin Maxwell, Glenn Albert, Jackson Meyer. Oh, Jackson Meyer. Oh, wait, no, okay, sorry, I was thinking of someone else. Jake Murray, Josh Kronberg, who I believe got cut. Justin Galiski, who got cut. Lance Pekas, Leaf Sonnenberg, Marquez Green, Megan Barton, Michael Larley, who got cut. Rainer Junt, and Rico Rivera, who got cut. Very sad that Rico got cut. I would have liked to see him. And as I mentioned before, Zanny Zimmerman is the only one to fail the floating monkey bars and not move on to Vegas. So, here are your people, your 13 people who are moving on to Vegas. We have Sean Bryan, the Speed Pass winner. He's not included in the top 12 list. He's separate from the rankings. He's moving on. He failed the floating monkey bars. We have 3 people who failed the Northwest Passage in the form of Dan Yeager, Carson Voiles, and Jessie Graff. And then everyone else on the top 12 failed the floating monkey bars. That would be Lauren Ball, David Moonen, Matt Dulce, Zach Scholes, Matty Howard, Scott Behrens, Nate Burkhalter, Nick Hansen, and Sean Darling Hammond. And that is everything on Seattle-Tacoma. This was way longer than I had any plans on making it, so I guess it is what it is. Oh well. On that note, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Make sure you vote if you haven't voted already. It's in this corner, my bad. It's in that corner. And that's it. Make sure you subscribe to hear when the next review is, because the next review is going to be the Baltimore Finals. I will finally be able to talk about this episode, which I was at the taping of, and I cannot wait to hear all the responses to this episode. It's going to be quite interesting. But until then, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you later.